The shadow that followed me from my dreams. I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. Ghost stories, haunted places, whispers in the night, none of it ever really unsettled me. At least, not until it started happening. It began subtly, a recurring dream that felt more like a memory than imagination. But each time, the world in my dream seemed off. The buildings were slightly distorted, the streets stretched longer than they should, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Streetlights flickered erratically, casting shifting shadows that seemed to move even when I stood still. And somewhere in the distance, a hollow whisper called my name. It didn't echo like a normal sound. It curled around me, seeping into my ears, as if the whisper was inside my head rather than outside. It was layered on voice on top of another, some deeper, some barely audible, all speaking my name in unison. Some of them were distorted, like echoes trapped in a broken radio, and one was almost too familiar, too much like my own voice. I was running, always running. The streets were dark, empty, yet I knew I wasn't alone. Something was behind me. I never saw its face, never heard its footsteps, but I could feel it. Its presence, its breath, its hunger. Each night, the dream would last a little longer. At first, I would wake up just before it reached me. But over time, the distance between us shrank. The closer it got, the more I began to notice strange things happening in my waking life. It started with shadows, flickering in the corner of my eye, disappearing the moment I turned. At first, I brushed it off as exhaustion, stress, maybe just my imagination. But then came the footsteps. I live alone. My apartment isn't big. But at night, when everything was silent, I would hear them soft, deliberate, pacing somewhere just beyond my bedroom door. The worst part? The sound always matched the rhythm of my dream. But sometimes, it changed. A second set of footsteps would start echoing mine, slightly out of sync, as if someone or something was trying to mimic me but failing. Sometimes, the imitation came before my own steps, as if whatever it was had started moving before I did, like it was anticipating me, like it already knew where I would go, like it had been here before. But sometimes, it didn't just match, it got closer. The footsteps would start in the distance, then suddenly shift, appearing right outside my door in an instant. Asterisk, asterisk. One night, as I laid in bed, trying to convince myself that I was being paranoid, I felt it. A pressure, like someone was sitting at the edge of my bed. Then, something cold, almost like fingertips, grazed my arm, feather-light, but unmistakable. My skin prickled with a sensation that wasn't entirely human. And then I felt it. A slow, deliberate breath against the back of my neck. Freezing and damp, like something standing just behind me. The breath carried a scent, musty, metallic, like the air in an abandoned basement long sealed away from the world. And worse, beneath it, lingered something familiar, a scent I couldn't place at first, until I realized it smelled exactly like my own skin. Not just my scent, but my sweat, my fear, my breath, as if something had been standing so close it had absorbed me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My body was paralyzed, trapped between sleep and wakefulness. But my mind was screaming. I could feel it staring at me, though I didn't know from where. I don't know how long I was trapped like that, but when I finally gasped for air, the weight was gone. I sat up, sweating, heart racing, eyes darting around the room. Nothing was there. But as I turned to check my phone, my stomach dropped. The screen was already on. The camera app was open, recording. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I pressed stop and played it back. The video was just a black screen at first, my room barely visible in the dim light. But then, something moved. A shadow. Not on the wall, not in the corner, but on the screen of my phone, reflected in the black glass as if it were behind me. I hadn't looked away from my phone. There was no way something could have moved behind me without me noticing. Yet, in the reflection, the shadow seemed closer than before, as if it had taken a step forward, and then another. Each time I blinked, it was closer. The dark outline of its body shifting, twisting, like it wasn't bound by normal movement. Its limbs seemed to stretch and shrink between blinks, its silhouette warping unnaturally. With each grotesque shift, there was a faint, wet crackling sound like bones bending the wrong way, like something breaking itself to fit into a shape it wasn't meant to take. But standing beside my bed, and then, just before the video ended, something else happened. Something I still can't explain. A whisper. My own voice, but it was distorted, stretched unnaturally, as if something else was speaking through me. And then, just before the video ended, the screen flickered, revealing a Facino, a grin twisted and wrong, lasting only a fraction of a second before vanishing into blackness. And as the screen dimmed, I saw a faint imprint on my bedsheets, as if something had been sitting there, watching me sleep. I reached out to touch the sheets, and they were still warm like something had been there just moments before. And then, as I pulled my hand away, a single indentation remained, 5 long claw-like impressions sinking into the fabric. I hesitated, my breath caught in my throat, before reaching out. The fabric was still indented, the depressions deep and unmoving, as if frozen in time. But worse, when my fingertips brushed over them, a faint warmth clung to the surface, like something had just been there. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just a mark, it was a trace of something that had lingered too long. Then, the bed dipped just slightly, as if something unseen had settled into place, waiting. It's here.